Cool. We'll get going, I think. People will slowly trickle in, I think. Wow, we got 60 people already. Everyone's keen to talk about it. So look, um, from basics to brilliance, I don't know, it's a bit of a marketing thing. Well, I don't know if I'm going to make you brilliant, but I certainly want you to be able to use ShiftCare with what we've got to do the best we can with SIL rostering. And we'll definitely go over some tricks and tips in the way that I have trained people over the years on how to set up their SILs. And hopefully that can help make things smoother for you guys. Um, yeah, with the chats, we won't be like, it's best if you use the actual Q&A. So there is a Q&A. If you can't see the button for the Q&A, check the more button at the bottom of your Zoom. There should be a Q&A section where you can put a question in. And then if Ian will be busily doing question and answers. And then if there's something that's worth talking about, he'll ping me and we'll say it in person. Otherwise, yeah, he'll get the answer. And yes, we are going to record this, and we're doing a whole masterclass series, by the way. So there will be. I'm hoping to do it sort of roughly every 2 weeks of different subjects, and then yeah, hopefully we'll have a really good list of cool content for everyone to get going. That's me. I'm operations manager and customer experience manager. Um, I do a lot of my role is working with the product team and trying to make sure that when we do releases that it's got, it's going to be right for you guys to use it, and that we've thought about the flows and everything like that. So I've been working really hard with them, and as you guys have seen, we've been super busy in the product side of things. Lots of stuff happening at the moment. So yeah, I think we'll jump in. Let's get going. So I think when I talk about SILs, and look, since I was onboarding new customers, which was about a year ago now, or 6 months, 8 months ago, it's changed a little bit because now we have this facilities feature on the left-hand side. So I think it's probably important to start with the whole SIL thing by talking about facilities and what facilities is. So let's have a look here on the left. We've got facilities. A lot of people, if any of you have used ShiftCare or already using ShiftCare a fair bit, you're probably going to know that you're probably going to say, well, I don't really like, what's the point of facilities? It doesn't do much at this stage. And look, to a degree, it doesn't do much right now, but I think it does a couple of things that are, well, one thing that's super important is that when you go to the scheduler, you can view by either staff, client, or facilities. And this facility view is really quite handy for a SIL. It kind of loses that concept of staff or client. It just looks at the whole thing, and it has all the shifts there, and it's really easy to see in a singular view what's going on in the SIL. Do I have the whole 24 hours covered? Who's on when, that kind of stuff. So in on itself, that's really good. But I will say as well that I have just started working on some new development work that we're going to have in the next couple of weeks or month or so, where the stuff here where it's got attachments, forms, clients, staff, and tasks, these are all going to drag across into shifts that you create in a facility. So if you have a task list here, when you create a shift and you assign it to that facility, it's going to grab those tasks. So for me, it's worth now starting to implement your facilities and starting to put this information into your facilities and getting ready for that update in the future, which will be really cool. So facilities are pretty straightforward. You come in and you can choose how you want to break your facilities down. So you might have a really huge SIL that has 15, 20 participants in it. It's got multiple levels of the facility. And in that case, you can do a facility, which is the name of the facility. And then down the bottom, you can put in sub facilities. So down there, you can have level 1, level 2, level 3, and that will help you to separate them when you're looking at them in the scheduler and stuff like that. So it's not just massive. So you can do that, or you can have it as one huge facility. It's totally up to you. So we'll create a new facility. We'll call it Paul's webinar facility. Sure, we're renting it. There's a bunch of information. Look, a lot of this information at the moment is based on like just informational for you to come in and like, it's just sort of an asset management, I suppose, in a way. One thing that I like about the facilities is that you can, with the map here, you can actually move the pin. So sometimes we find with addresses that what Google thinks it is isn't quite right, and actually it's over here, even though the address is right, but the pin is in the wrong spot. So you can do that. And when you do a shift that's on this facility, it will put that pin when they click in Google Maps on the app, it will put it in the right spot. Which is kind of cool. Cool. I think that's enough. I think I've got to do that. What else have I got to do? Facility type. All right, cool. All right, so we've created a facility. And like I say, you can go through, look at the moment, this is pretty much just informational, but it will be worth doing. I'm going to make sure it's going to be worth doing. So you can go through and do that. So when you're in the scheduler, we can go into facility view, and then from there you can choose which facility you're going to look at. Now, there's a few other things that I would set up before I start rostering a SIL. And I think a lot of this is going to be about how do you invoice a participant for the time as well as rostering the shifts on for a participant. Now, the session that I'm doing today is going to be talking about if you're invoicing a participant on an hourly basis. So you're going to charge per hour. You've got the charges, and you're going to do that. If you're charging a participant on a weekly basis, it's not something that ShiftCare really look. We do support it in a way that you can create a shift on a Monday morning, and you can put a price book on there, and you can say it's the weekly SIL charge, and it will charge the weekly amount, and that'll be it. I'm not crash hot on that. I think it shows up in the invoice with the time of that shift. So it's like Monday morning, 9 a.m. to 10 a.m., $15,000. It's just weird. I think there's an argument to say that it's just quicker and easy to use templates in Xero for your weekly SIL charge, and just charge it through Xero or whatever accounting platform you're using for your weekly charges. And for your hourly charges, though, I absolutely think you should use ShiftCare, and I will go through exactly how to make that happen in ShiftCare. Now, the first thing that I always recommend, this facility view is great, and it's good, but sometimes you want to see it in context of all your other shifts as well. So you may want to use staff and client views to view even your facilities. What I would recommend is that you set up shift types. So when you go to account and settings, and you've got your shift types here, I would put a shift type for the SIL as well. So I would create a shift type called Paul's webinar facility. Yeah, look, I think facilities is a premium only feature at this stage, which might be why you can't see that. Paul's webinar facility. So I created a shift type called that, and also I would also create a shift type called SIL invoicing, and it'll become clear why I'm going to do that later. So they're the two, and yes, I would create a shift type for each each facility or each SIL. It doesn't have to say the word facility in it. Yeah, you can just put the address or whatever you want to put there. And that's the sort of first setup I would do. And then we would start talking about actually building out a roster. So usually you'll have one of those amazing spreadsheets where you've done the roster of care from the NDIA with, all the ratios of time, and, between this hour and this hour, it's charged at 1-to-1 and 2-to-1 or 1-to-3 and all that kind of stuff. And that's where it kind of goes, well, how do I get that spreadsheet from that into ShiftCare? And look, the simplest way to do it is to think of it in ShiftCare as you're rostering two sets of shifts. Essentially, what you're rostering is you're setting your shifts for your staff, and your staff are going to do those shifts, and you build the structure of that by the actual staff and the hours that they're working to cover your 24 hours of care. And within those shifts, you're going to not charge. You're not going to charge for those shifts. Those shifts are there just for the staff to clock in and clock out and leave their shift notes, and for you to track your staff and what's going on with your staff. And so that's one set of shifts. And then what else we'll do is we'll set a 24-hour shift each day for each participant that has the breakdown of how you want to charge that 24-hour period. So what we'll do is we'll create a set of shifts as though we're sort of doing a roster, and you'll be able to see that in practice. One other thing that you'll need to do is have a price book that's called no charge. So if you don't already have that, so I have a price book called no charge. Essentially, you just set it up like this. You just put the per hour as 0.001 cent, and it just won't charge for that shift. And that's going to be on those shifts that we're going to set up. So let's go through and say, okay, let's go into client view. I've got Brad Pitt. He's in my SIL. He's going to start on the 25th next week. I'll just delete this shift so we don't get confused. And I'm going to create a roster of shifts for him. So again, it depends, people roster very differently across their different SILs. So it's going to be hard for me to factor in every single one of them. But most people will usually have a day shift, maybe an afternoon shift and a night shift. And so that's probably the most common I see is like, okay, it's 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. And then 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. Then you sleep over, and then you're 6 a.m. to 8 a.m. in the morning, and rinse and repeat that every 24 hours. So let's start with something like that. If someone has a specific scenario that they want me to cover, then we can look at that. But let's just start with that. And so let's start on Monday morning. Let's start with the first day shift on Monday morning. So I'm going to go in and put Brad Pitt. Again, I'm going to put, because I'm doing the staffing side of it at the moment, it's no charge. I'm not going to charge for these shifts. I'm going to put them in the SIL. So I'm going to say, yep, this is in that SIL shift type. And again, I'll explain why I do that shift type once we put in a few shifts. I'm going to put the facility in, and we're going to put in the date and the time. So let's say it's from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. Actually, let's make it 9 a.m. 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. I'm going to repeat it weekly. Now, I always, when I'm doing repeating, and I talk about this when I'm training people, is you might say, well, actually, I do this every day, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, even Saturday, Sunday. Why wouldn't I just repeat every single day? The reason why you wouldn't do that is because probably the staff member that does the Monday isn't going to be the same staff member that does the Tuesday or the Wednesday or the Thursday. And when you link them all together like that, when you change the staff member on one, it changes all the other days. So you really want to have 7 weekly recurring shifts, one for each day of the week. Don't forget, we've changed it that you can now do up to 3 years of recurring shifts, which is amazing. So if you do have a SIL where, maybe they've got a plan for 2 or 3 years, you can now do that. So you can kind of set and forget it, which is awesome. Carer. So yep, Android Carer does this shift. Yeah, we've got the facility in. That's sort of your day shift. Pretty straightforward day shift there. If I was going to do this for the whole week, I would go up here and go copy, and then I would copy the recurring shifts, and I would change the day to Tuesday, and then maybe a different carer is going to do the Tuesday shift. And that's how quick it is to create your recurring shifts for 7 days a week. You can go through and really quickly update it. I'll do Wednesday as well. Great. So now we've got our 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. shift, and we do have we do have a question about the next part actually already in the Q&A that I saw. So it says, I have a SIL with one participant who is non-active through the night. How do I split the shift? 4 p.m. to 10 p.m., 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. Do I need to split it, or do I need to create 2 different shifts for the one client? So that's a really good question. And look, in the example that I'm doing, it would be a 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. shift and then a 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. shift, but same difference. It's no different. So there's a couple of things I actually want to talk about with this. So first, at the moment, it is our suggestion that you split these into 3 shifts. And the reason why this needs to be split into 3 shifts is because of the way the sleepover works. So the 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. part of the shift is a sleepover, and it's paid as an allowance, and it's not an hourly charge. And so we have to put an allowance onto that shift so that it knows that that's the sleepover period. I want to first let you know that I have just had a conversation with the CEO this morning about this, and I am starting work either this Friday or Monday to work with a product owner to actually scope out the ability to have one long shift for sleepovers. So it would be from 6 p.m. until 9 a.m. the next morning. And then within that shift, you'll be able to add a sleepover to that shift. And then that way it will automatically, and it'll be one long shift, which is amazing. You'll also, part of that is also going to be awake tracking. So we're going to have the ability for staff to, while they're on a shift, to say, I got woken up, I had to work from this time to this time. And then you can look at having adding allowances and all that kind of stuff to pay your staff the overtime that's required for that. That's the first part. So we'll go through the current way, which is 3 separate shifts. The second thing I wanted to add that I think it's worth mentioning is that Fair Work are currently reviewing, and I haven't checked for a couple of days. I keep checking this because I just want to know whether they're actually updated it yet. That's not what I'm looking for. Maybe they've where have they? Maybe they've moved it. Anyway, there's an article on paying sleepovers, and essentially the article from Fair Work and the advice that Fair Work have given since I've been doing this work is that the shift before and after a sleepover have to be paid at the night rate, because the sleepover isn't a break, and it's one long shift that goes from 6 p.m. until 9 a.m. So therefore, it's a shift that finishes after midnight, and you have to pay the shift before and after a sleepover as a night rate. Now, a company took Fair Work to court in July about this because Fair Work tried to fine them, or so because they weren't doing that, they were paying the afternoon rate and the ordinary rate for the shifts, and they actually won that case. And the court agreed that a sleepover is a break and that you don't need to pay the night rate for the shift before and after a sleepover. And so we're waiting on Fair Work to update their official advice, and then we'll look at how we implement that into ShiftCare and also with our advice. But it is worth probably bearing that in mind, that there are changes coming in regards to that. I think last time I checked, though, Fair Work was still sticking with their original advice. But yeah, that's something worth factoring in. Yeah, I am splitting night shifts. However, the sleepover never registers in billing and pay. It has to be manually added every time. So yeah, let's go through that. All right, so I've got my 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. shift. Let's add in the 6 p.m. to 10. So you do have to do it as 2 shifts. And again, it's going to be no charge. I'm going to put it in the SIL, and I'm going to set it to 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. I'm going to set it to repeat every Monday. Whatever, repeat till then, and I'm going to put it on. I'm going to put on a different carer. So that's the 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. shift. And again, Currently, the Fair Work advice would be that this needs to be paid at the night rate, which means that you would need to have a pay group that overrides ShiftCare and pays the night rate. It's something that I cover in the webinar that I did on Xero and mastering the SHADS award with Xero. But again, I wouldn't make any drastic changes at the moment. I would wait for any news to come through on exactly how we should deal with that. But yeah, that's how you create that 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. shift. And then you've got your 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. shift. So again, I'm going to put it in the SIL. I'm going to say shift finishes next day. I don't think I put the facility in on that last one, so don't forget to do that. 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. Shift finishes next day. I'm going to repeat it weekly again. And I'm going to put it on the same carer. He's going to do that. Now, the important part with this one, and the part that somebody said here, the sleepover never registers in billing and pay. So we're not doing billing with these shifts. We're only doing pay with this shift. So I'm not going to worry about the billing, but I am going to say if you want it to pay the sleepover, you have to add the sleepover allowance to that shift. That sleepover allowance is what tells the payroll system like Xero, MyOb, whatever you're using, PayCat, Employment Hero, that this isn't a regular shift. We're not paying an hourly wage. We're paying one sleepover allowance through that. Cool. So we'll hit save on that. Yeah, Ian, if you could have a look through the Slack, I think we had the information on the court ruling. That was really interesting to
Yeah,
read.
no problem. I'll share that.
Thank you. Yeah, it's really quite interesting to read, and yeah, it'll be an interesting space to watch. All right, so we've got the 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. We've got the 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. and we put a sleepover allowance on that. And then we've got the next part to do, which is the 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. Cool. So in reality, if I were to copy these onto Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and look, if you were so lucky that your SIL happened to be like this all the way through, we'd be really pleased for that. And look, some people do have SIL shifts that are completely consistent like this. And in my mind, it's always like, how can we simplify and make things as simple as possible? Then we've done the 24-hour shifts. I put the wrong shift type on it. And I also didn't set the facility. And actually, this is a good point. So when you create a shift, if you don't set the facility when you create the shift, you can't add the facility after. And some people go, oh, that's really crazy. I've got to delete the shift. I've got to recreate it. The easiest thing to do to fix that is you just go more actions copy, and then you copy the recurring shift. And then at that time, I can add the facility, and I can change the shift type. And then I can just hit save, and that fixes the problem. I've just now created a whole new one, so I can then get rid of the wrong one that I made. I can hit delete. Thanks, Debbie. See you later. All right, and then I just hit edit and save on that to update it. Cool. Same with this one. I forgot to put this one in the facility. And we'll hit save on that. Cool. All right. So we've built out our 24-hour shifts, at least for the first 2 days, almost. And so that takes care of like clocking in and clocking out. It's going to take care of paying the staff member the sleepover allowance. It's going to take care of paying them for active hours before and after the shift. That's really it from a payroll perspective. Like that's good to go. So then the sort of begs the question then from there is like, okay, well, that's all well and good. How do I charge the client for this? And how do I make sure I'm charging them the right rates? And I think someone asked, what time does the evening rate start? It starts at 8 p.m. And that kind of stuff. So it's important to note that the way the SHADS award, the way that the NDIS billing invoicing works and the way that the SHADS award is written is that a shift that finishes after 8 p.m. So if it finishes after 8 p.m. and before midnight, it has to be paid at the afternoon rate, which it's a silly name because it's more like the evening rate, but it's called the afternoon rate in the SHADS award. And so if I am a staff member and I work 6 p.m. to 10 p.m., I need to be paid at the afternoon rate for the whole shift. And so that's 4 hours of the afternoon rate. Now, the way the NDIS price guide is written as well is that it says that if you have a shift that's between 6 a.m. and 8 p.m., it needs to be paid it's charged at the ordinary hours, and a shift after 8 p.m. and midnight, it's charged at the evening hours. And so a lot of people think, okay, well, for this shift, I need to charge from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. at the ordinary hours, and then 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. at the evening rate. But actually, that's not right. The NDIS price guide also has a stipulation for shifts like that. So let me just bring up the pricing arrangements and I'll show you guys. All right, so this is the part of the pricing arrangement. I'll try and zoom in a bit, make sure it's big enough for you to all see. So this talks about the time of the day and the day of the week. And it says here, okay, a weekday support is a supporter participant that starts after 6 a.m. and ends at or before 8 p.m. And then it's got the evening and weeknight. And it says here, if a support participant does not meet one of the above criteria, then it needs to be billed as 2 or more separate supports. And that's, I think, where people think, okay, I need to charge from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. at one and 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. at the other. But this is the really important part here. It says an exception to this rule occurs when a particular support crosses a shift boundary and the same worker delivers the entire support. In this case, the higher of the relevant price limit applies to the entire support and the provider should make a claim. So in the case of this shift here, a 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. shift, it crosses into the evening rate. Therefore, and the same staff member is providing that whole shift, therefore we should charge the whole shift at the evening rate. And it kind of makes sense because you have to pay the staff member at the afternoon rate for the whole shift. So it's fair that you can charge a little bit more per hour as well for that. So let's talk about how to actually do the charging. Now, the charging can actually, again, it can be really simple or it can be really hard based on how complex and, do you have 3 participants in this SIL, and then for some of the day it's 1-to-1, some of the other day it's 1-to-2, and then it's 1-to-3 and all that kind of stuff. And look, you look at it on a per client basis and how do I want to invoice this client? And so let's look at Brad Pitt, and let's say from Monday, what we would do is we would create a shift and we would put it in, this is where we would actually start using the actual price book that you want to charge. So it might be assistance in supported independent living. Would be probably good if I actually had the assistance in supported independent living price book, but I'll just use the assistance in self-care activities standard because that's close enough. Let's say it's high intensity. And then this is when I'm going to use that shift type that I said called SIL invoicing. And then we're going to come down here and we're going to set it. And this is the part where you say, okay, it finishes next day. I'm going to create a shift that starts at 6 a.m. and it finishes at 6 a.m. the next day. It's a 24-hour shift. In terms of the staff, it doesn't matter what staff you put on there. I would use either an admin staff that doesn't do shifts like me, Paul Admin, or you can create a placeholder staff, like you can create a staff member with no access and call it SIL Invoicing 1, SIL Invoicing 2, or whatever. Just needs to be assigned to someone, but it's not a shift that I'm going to clock in and clock out of. It's not a shift that I'm going to attend. It's purely there to do the invoicing for this client. And so when we go up here and we go to advanced edit, this is where we need to, on the left-hand side here, split down this 24-hour period to the charges that we want to do. So what we would do is we would go split a few times and we would say, okay, from 6 a.m. to 9 a.m., I'm going to charge assistance in self-care activities or supported independent living. And again, the arguments here now that you should charge this as ordinary hours because the new changes in Fair Work's going to mean that paying the staff member is going to be ordinary hours. So that'll be fine. Otherwise, you can create a price book to charge the night rate for that part of the shift. And then you've got your 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. and that's going to do assistance in self-care. And then you've got your 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. And of course, ShiftCare is going to automatically charge the evening rate for the whole 4 hours of that because it looks at what time it finishes and goes, oh, that's the evening time. So it's going to charge the evening rate for that part. And then you do your 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. And this part, you need to put the sleepover price book on. So that's going to charge that sleepover for that period of time. So this is now a shift that's going to charge your whole 24-hour period. And then I actually don't have a problem with repeating. And again, it depends on how you're going to invoice. But if this was legitimately how you're going to invoice every day, then there's no problem with setting daily and doing that. Or you might say, oh, on a Monday to Friday, I charge this way, but on a Saturday, I charge a different way. I have different staff coming in at different times. And so that's how you can quickly set up invoicing for the client, and that will do. And then if any of the ratios need to be changed, like this has all got ratios here, so you just put in the ratios. If you had it more complex, so like I said, I'm giving a very easy example here, and I'm aware of that, but it doesn't matter how complex it is. If you said, oh, well, actually for the first 2 hours, it's 1 to 2, and then for the next 3 hours, it's 1 to 3, then you just need to keep splitting it. And you go, okay, 9 a.m. to 11 a.m., it's going to be 1 to 2, and then 11 a.m. until whatever is going to be 1 to 3. And you just keep doing it. And yeah, that sort of, if you do that and that's the same, and if it's the same only on a Monday, then make it a Monday repeating shift only. If it's the same for Monday and Tuesday, then make it a repeating shift on Monday and Tuesday. Like you just need to build it out how you want it to be. So if I hit save on that now, that's going to create that shift. So I've got that SIL invoicing 24-hour shift. And if I go now to do the invoicing, and I say I want to do from the 25th to the 26th, I'm going to have an invoice that's going to get generated. And when I click view report, it's going to show me a bunch of stuff. Now, obviously, the no charges are not a concern. It's only the charging part that we need to look at. And so, yeah, we can see here on the Monday, we've got 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. It's got a charge, and that's high intensity. That's why it's a bit higher. And then we've got the 9 a.m. to 11 a.m., 2 hours at 1 to 2 ratio. And then you've got, yeah, your other charges. So that's going to do the invoicing all perfect. Let's have a look at some questions and see if there's anything. Julia, I hope that kind of covered about how it registers in billing and pay. I covered both sides of that, sleepover for the pay and the 24-hour shift with the sleepover price book on it for the invoicing. Hi, Paul. We found that an overnight shift that goes from 9 p.m. to 7 a.m. gets paid at the day rate. We think it should be at the night rate. If the shift is 9 a.m. to 6 a.m., the pay is night, but as soon as it finishes later, we get the day rate for the entire shift. Yeah, that's a really common one. So, and we're talking about non-sleepovers now. We're talking about active shifts. The reason why that happens is because ShiftCare, in terms of how it works out how to pay a staff member, is it looks at what time the shift finishes. It then looks at your pay price pay groups, and it looks at that table and it goes, okay, where does that sit in that table? I'm paying the whole shift at that rate. And so the problem that most people have is that their shifts will be set up to be 12 a.m. to 6 a.m., 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. And you can actually see that I've changed that, and that's how you fix that. So what you do is you come in here and you say, well, actually the night rate is 12 a.m. to 7 a.m., 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. And because 7 a.m. is still in the night time, it's going to pay the night rate. Now, it can get a bit trickier though. If you said to me, actually, I have a 10 p.m. till 8 a.m. shift, it gets a bit funky, because if you change this to 8 a.m., your problem that you're going to have is that you may actually have a legitimate 6 a.m. to 8 a.m. shift that should only pay the ordinary rate, but it will pay the night rate if you change this to 8 a.m. What you need to do for that is you need to create another price book called casual night rate, which you can see I've created here. And what you do there is, it doesn't matter what time the shift is. If you have that come up, you can put that as the pay group. It doesn't matter when the shift is, it's going to pay the night rate. Now, I cover this quite in depth in the Xero webinar that I did, so Mastering the Shads award with Xero. So it's worth having a look at that, but it does depend on, I'm going to assume that you're using Xero, because Paycat and Employment Hero, it would just do it for you anyway. And honestly, that if I was going to give advice to any of you now, if your business is scaling and you're up at like 30, 40 staff, look at Employment Hero and Paycat, because it's just going to make your life so much easier. Cool. I hope that answered your question. When doing the 24 shift for invoicing with no access invoicing staff, how to ensure the right staff members who worked are paid for the shift and they're not assigned to it? So yeah, that fake staff member is only assigned to that invoicing shift. So that invoicing shift, it's like a fake shift. It's not a shift that anyone's going to clock in and clock out of. It's only for invoicing, and you're still assigning the real staff to that first set of shifts that we did, where they're set to the facility and all that kind of stuff. That's still going to be like legitimately done. I saw something in the chat. I'm consistently having issues with ShiftCare flagging award warnings when rostering sleepovers. For example, I roster staff from 4 p.m. to 10 p.m., a sleepover, and then 6 a.m. the next morning. Shift still flags it as an insufficient break. Our legal advice is, under the current court ruling, that 6 a.m. must be paid at double time due to no 10-hour break, but ShiftCare system doesn't seem to recognize the separation. Finally, rostering consecutive. Okay, so look, I would probably say, given what's happening with the court case that happened in July, I would say we need to probably just hold off on that for a little bit longer until we get more advice from Fair Work, and then I'll make sure that the SHADS alerts are updated as per what the advice is once it's been updated. Finally, rostering consecutive evening and sleepover shifts creates further issues. The 6 a.m. triggers a break shift, meaning any return later in the day falls outside the 12-hour span. It's a double time. Yeah, so I probably, Nathan, do you want to send me an email, paul@shiftcare.com? I'd love to look at how you're rostering and what rules are triggering off and everything like that. Certainly the SHADS Awards is a complex, like as we all know, the SHADS Award is an absolute pain. And so it is possible that some alerts may be coming up when they shouldn't be, or they're not coming up when they should be. And I'm certainly keen to get on top of all scenarios. It's just really hard to cover every single scenario perfectly, but the more I can get and the more info I can get, the better. So yeah, send me an email. We'll organize a quick meeting one day and you can run me through some of the alerts that you're seeing. And I'll definitely try and get some work done on the SHADS alerts to make it better. I would actually just like to see the SHADS alerts be a little less noisy anyway. There's some alerts that we don't need to see and stuff like that. So yeah, I'll jump onto that. Yeah, look, I think that pretty much covers the SIL rostering. That's how I recommend setting up a SIL. The reason, by the way, I said it'll become clear. The reason why I did the shift types and I put them as the webinar facility is because what happens when you have a lot of shifts and you've got a lot of clients that are, some are getting in-home support, some are community access, some are in a SIL. The scheduler just gets super busy. You just get stuff everywhere, and it gets really hard for you to look at things in a vacuum. And look, the facility is definitely, like, the facility view is definitely a massive improvement on that. But if you wanted to look across multiple facilities, or you wanted to compare, you can do that. But you can also, in client, you will also now be able to go webinar facility. And what it does is it removes out all that billing. It removes out all the other shifts, things that aren't in that SIL. It removes everything out. And so it just makes it a way easier for you to just see just that SIL in your scheduler. And the feedback I get from people that set it up like this is that they really prefer it that way. So yeah, hopefully that'll help. With only one client in SIL, we only roster under carer. Do we still have to do the invoicing shift? Look, I would generally recommend doing it as 2 shifts, just because there are sometimes a detachment from how you invoice to how you do it. And look, Julia, yeah, you probably could just do it as one. If it's only one client and it's only one facility and like that's it, then yeah, it's probably not going to cause you too much dramas. But if anything changes, if you think that there could be a second person, then it might be worth setting up a separate shift to start with. But yeah, this advice is probably for at least 2 participants in a SIL. A quick confirmation. So we would be maintaining our workers' shifts for the SIL and invoicing shifts separately. Is there a change on the roster? We would need to change both separately. Yeah, if there's a change, it depends. If there's a change in the roster in how you're going to roster your staff on, and you're going to like change your day shift to be 2 separate day shifts, then no, you don't need to change the billing side of it because the invoicing hasn't changed. But if there is a change where you are going to change how you invoice your client and how you roster, then yes, you'll need to change both shifts. But yeah, if it's just a staffing change or a subtle time change that doesn't change any of the invoicing, then no, you don't need to update the invoicing shift. The invoicing shift generally is kind of a set and forget, because you usually have like an agreement with them on how you're going to charge and do all that. And then if you do make any last second changes, you kind of wear it as a business because you already had the agreement to charge them the way that you did. But it's totally up to you. You decide whether you want to edit both shifts or just the rostered shift. Cool. By the way, it's probably worth mentioning, anybody that's here, that this morning or late last night, I actually turned on a new feature for availability. So, you know, we knew that we changed how unavailability works, but it was always going to be part of having this next step, which is availability. So instead of your staff having to constantly tell you when they're not available, why don't they just tell you the days that they are available? And that's the idea of it. So the way it works is you can come in and say, okay, I want to add availability for Android Carer, and you can see here that I have put availability. He's available on a Saturday from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. Now, at the moment, and this is very much at the moment, that's pretty much all it does is it shows you here in this grid, but we have got some changes coming that'll be coded next week. That we will be having it so that if you try to roster a staff member and it's outside of their availability, it will display a warning and just say, hey, this is outside of their availability. Of course, you know, you might have called them and said, hey, I know you're not available, but can you just do this shift? And they go, yeah, no problems. I'll do it this week. So you can still save it and you can still do it, but at least it warns you that it's outside of their availability. So this is going to be a huge improvement into how availability versus unavailability. The idea is that you would use both, right? So your staff member would say, I'm available on a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, but then one week I might have a birthday party coming up on Tuesday when I'm normally available. I'm not going to say that I'm not going to edit my availability. I'm just going to add an unavailability for that same day. It overrides that availability. So it'll come up and say, no, the staff member is actually not available on that day, because it's a one-off unavailability. So yeah, this is all really cool functionality stuff that we're adding. Will's asked about the beta. Great question, Will. Can you send me an email, actually, paul@shiftcare.com, just to remind me, but I'm having a meeting tomorrow. We're starting a beta for that on Monday. So it's very much an early bird beta. So if anyone's interested in the support at home stuff, we're looking for people. What it'll be is it'll be on a sandbox, so it won't be on your live account. We'll get you to sign up to a trial of ShiftCare, and we'll turn it on in that so that you can play around with it, because it's so early and it's so far away. We kind of figure we're better off leaving it in a space where it's not going to affect any of your current live data. But yeah, we are looking for people to have a play with that. Yeah, so it should be good. How do you put it in? How do you remove it if it changes? I think you can. I think carers can do it from the app, but if you go into available here and go Android carer, you can remove it here, and then you can re-add it if you want to change it. I think the next phase after the warnings is to have an edit button on all of these. So edit on unavailability and availability. So instead of having to remove the whole thing and add it again, I can just change. So if I change from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m., I don't want to have to remove it and add it again. I just want to edit this current one that I have. That'll be something we get to. Cool. If anyone else has got any questions that they want to ask while you've got me, now's the time. I hope that was helpful for you guys. Thank you to Ian for manning the questions.
Great job today, Paul. Thanks very much for taking everyone through that.
No worries. Did I forget anything, by the way? Anything that you wanted to add?
No.
Because Ian's been at ShiftCare since the beginning of ShiftCare, so he's our resident expert on everything as well. Cool. No more questions coming in. Thanks, guys. Don't forget it will be sent to you to have a look. Yeah, thank you all for coming. Have a great day.